these are some things that we really need to keep a close eye out on.
Yeah.
So I have one last question here for you. Because of course at this point, we know what child abuse is. We got some information on you for some cases, and we know it's not just one race, it's not just one age group, it's not about finances, it's not about the person themselves. Um, are there any messages or helpful tips you want to share with parents or caregivers who were abused themselves as children, now finding themselves as parents?
Children who were abused and they grew up to have their own kids, they're more likely to repeat the cycle as adults. And they might not intentionally do it. It could be unconscious. Um, repeating what they experienced. Because lots of times we as grown-ups, we do what we grew up seeing and how we live. So unconsciously, they might subject their own kids to those things, Or on the other hand, you might have some parents that they have lived through it, and they intentionally make sure that their kids never go through it. They might be strongly motivated to protect their kids from what they went through, and they might become excellent parents. So it can be at any end of the pole. I would just tell a person who has been abused to just be self-conscious. Think about what you went through and try not to subject your child to it, and maybe get some counseling to deal with those things that you have been through that might not be resolved within you, because you might think that it is and it might not be, and you might find yourself doing to your kids what was done to you. And then the cycle just keeps spiraling down for generations and generations to come. So I guess my best advice is to make sure that you get the help that you need to get over your hurt, so your hurt does not ruin your child's life.
Yeah, it's definitely some good advice. I know, especially here in the pandemic, most parents are home with their children. You know, fathers are going out to work, mothers are in the house with children. And, you know, the other thing with this pandemic is they don't have their mandated reporters anymore. Are you seeing a shift in the amount of cases that come in because of?
Well, they done started going back to school, so the cases coming back in is flooding us. Now that they back in school,
Yes.
the cases are coming in. From what I was told, the numbers were lower. But now that kids are back in places where mandated reporters can see them, the numbers have increased. So the cases are flooding in.
Wow.
But you're right. When there's nobody to see, or nobody that the child can tell, then it makes it a little bit harder, unless there's other relatives that they can tell, because there are some relatives that turn their relatives in, and you're not going to church, so nobody can see it, because believe it or not, clergy, they're mandated reporters. So what calls might have came from the church, or what could have came from the school might not came. Now the hospital can still give those calls, because people still going to the hospital. The doctor's office, stuff like that. If you're taking them to the doctor and stuff like that, then those calls still rolling. But yeah, a lot of reports, they do come from public places like the school and stuff.
Okay. And I'm sure you guys encourage mandated reporters. And just so some of our listeners may not know exactly what a mandated reporter is, can you tell us what a mandated reporter is?
Yeah, so mandated reporters would be people like social workers, doctors, clergy. Um, there's a whole lot of mandated reporters, nurses, and different people, and it's somebody that is responsible for reporting abuse and neglect when they see it. That's basically what it is. If we see it, we report it. And the coroner, even the coroner, is a mandated reporter, because if they get deceased people to come in and they see something that doesn't look right, then they report as well, so justice can be served.
I did not know that. I did not know
Yes,
a coroner was a mandated reporter.
yes, ma'am, they are, because um there's a lot of people who die in all kind of different ways, and people think, oh well, we got away with that. Nobody will ever know that it was due to me doing something to that person that I should not have done. But coroners, when they get the bodies, those bodies get inspected and autopsies or something, because even though the body might look good on the outside, you could have did something on the inside that caused that person to die. Could have been internal bleeding, any kind of thing could have happened on the inside. So just because you don't see it on the outside doesn't mean that they didn't die by somebody's hand or some kind of neglect or abuse or sexual trauma or something that could have taken place. A coroner can tell you all of those things, so they're very important. um they're very important reporters.
Wow, that I definitely didn't know that. Seems like you guys have a lot going on, and I just thank you for all the work that you all are doing in the community because, we can't be everywhere, but you guys are hands on the ground. Just before we go, can you give us a typical day in the life of Vanessa? What do you do?
What do I do? Ooh, a lot. A social worker or a caseworker does a lot, because you are responsible for your caseload, and your caseload could have 30 to 40 kids in it, and you're responsible for seeing every last one of those kids physically in their home at least once a month. So that means I need to make contact, and I need to talk to them and the caregiver about any problems or concerns. I need to physically lay eyes on where you lay, talk to you privately, and make sure that there's nothing going on, because sitting in front of someone grown, you might not want to say it because you might be scared, but in private, you might be more comfortable to tell me what's going on. There's a lot of court hearings that you go to on behalf of the kids, and there's shelter care, and that's a hearing for when we first pull a child in. Those mandated reporters, when they call in, and we have a department that actually goes out and they investigate that, and then that case gets passed on down to me, and so it then becomes my responsibility to go to court to this shelter care meeting and see what's going to happen to that child. Will that child be put in foster care, or will they be able to remain safely with somebody else? And that could be a relative, a family resource, or something like that that the parents have named. I could be on call after already doing a shift. I could be on call, and that could be where the people who call in, those mandated reporters, or just the public in general, who we need to also report to us, because the public is very important. Um, I might have to get up at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock if the hospital calls the phone, because we hold a phone that the public can call or mandated reporters can call and put in reports of neglect and abuse and stuff like that. And so that might require me getting up out my bed, going to check that out. Or maybe I just take the report and then pass it on to the team and they go out within 5 days, because we have a 5-day and a 12-hour. With that 12-hour, I must get up out that bed or stop what I'm doing and go right then to investigate what's going on. And that could, like, we do one weekday, then we do a holiday, and we have a weekend. So I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for all notes and stuff going in the computer from my visits. I'm responsible for making sure these kids have Medicaid. I am responsible for making sure that they have gotten their medicals done and that they're all up to date. I am responsible for if there is any needs that need to be met, such as clothes and stuff like that. I'm responsible for getting vouchers so that they can get their new clothes and shoes, or if it be for Pampers or whatever, I'm responsible for that. Making sure they're signed up for WIC if they need WIC. I am responsible for pursuing child support, because we don't just take care of people's kids, as I was told. We may and we may not get child support from the parent, but it is my responsibility to make sure that I file paperwork for child support. If the family needs TANF, it is my responsibility to make sure that happens. It's my responsibility to find permanent resources for the kids. That means trying to get mom and dad to tell me some relatives, and just in case the kid can't go back home. And if there's no relatives, then it's my responsibility to also let that be known so that they can work on trying to get the child a permanent home by adoption. There's a whole lot of things that I do.
Wow, it
So many
sounds like
things.
you're
I'm
so
pretty,
busy. And I
yes.
just thank you for your time and just taking the time out to share some of those things with us. So if there's someone out there who's in the local area, what's the number that they can dial if they wanted to report child abuse?
If you wanted to report child abuse, oh, I can't tell you that off the top of my head. You can just look up DHR's main number, and that should give you the number. But off of the top of my head, I really don't have that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I heard something like a 211 or some type of informational number. Does that sound familiar?
Well, 211 is the local resource here in Huntsville for anything. So if you didn't have that number, it's kind of like, you know how we used to have telephone books?
Yeah.
Well, 211 is just like the living telephone book. You call them, you tell them what you need, and they will look it up and find it for you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. That's a good community resource. And nationally, like you said, you can just go to one of the child abuse websites and they'll be able to provide a national number. Thank you so much for your time again. I really appreciate it. You've given us so much valuable information, all the tips to look out for, and it's just been a pleasure to speak with you today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for considering me.
All right. Well, you take care and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye bye.